You know, it's a company line. Now, I just find that appalling. And they have done it, and the Telegraph's done it too in the criminal justice area, so I think they are part of a problem. But I don't say all the media, and they're intelligent contributors like Michael and others have contributed on this debate and are contributing well on this debate. But I think that also you make a valid point because, you know, in relation to euthanasia, I mean, again, every opinion poll I see supports, you know, right to die legislation, and yet, you know, politicians are so wary about it. I think in relation to drugs, though, that this is a global movement. This is happening, and eventually in Australia we catch up with global movements.
Alex, can I ask, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I think I'd caution people against thinking about this in terms of an either-or kind of an event phenomenon, as your question implied. I think it's a process, and I think the process is clearly underway. For example, we've had the UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon on May the 7th this year making a statement about HIV/AIDS, which included a recommendation that we should decriminalise drugs. The UN Secretary-General. So it's as safe as that. The process is well underway. We've heard a little bit about changes in South America. There's been a lot of change in Western Europe and North America, for that matter, so that France and Germany and the Netherlands have made changes to the way instructions to the police. And in essence, the drugs have been decriminalised in Netherlands and Germany. And in Portugal, Spain and Italy, the laws have been changed and drugs have been decriminalised in terms of personal possessions. And I think this is clearly gathering momentum. There are other countries now that are thinking about this. Denmark has decided to provide heroin prescription treatment, not on the basis of research that was done in that country, but research that was done in half a dozen other countries. And all 9 major political parties in Denmark a year or so ago made that decision that Denmark will start providing that in the next year or so. So as you look, you see more and more change happening. If you look at the opinion polls in the United States from 1969 to this year on the question of legalization of cannabis, there was 10% support in 1969, and when we look at all the polls that have been done in the United States this year, there's over 40% support now. And the movement has gone up and down, but it's clear trend over 40 years to support. In April this year, a very well-respected poll, Zogby, estimated that 52% of Americans support taxation and regulation of cannabis today. So it's clear what's going to happen. It's not clear how long it's going to take and what form this will take, but there's clearly movement, and I think one of the big differences is that a lot of people who are now getting into political power are people who, like Barack Obama himself, have had personal experience with cannabis and cocaine, realise that it's got problems, but he himself has said the war on drugs is an utter failure. He's uttered that phrase in the US Senate. So the world is changing, and I think it was a big movement when Barack Obama assumed office, and he's a person who is very realistic and very honest in talking about some very difficult things like this topic.
Would it be possible to get the microphone over here?
Yes, of
the
course.
Far left, I don't think they have the chance.
The gentleman there.
Yes.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Steve Zlatko-Pavlovic. Very briefly, I'm 50 years of age. I've been smoking pot up to today. And I don't know, but in Australia we have a big problem. Firstly, legalised marijuana based on ACT law and South Australia law. Federal and state. Free plants, personal use, and so much on yourself. That's all.
Just a quick question following on from your points about privatisation and the American system. And while I don't question Obama's commitment, he seems to be having trouble even getting some sort of health system through. And my personal opinion is that the privatisation in America is too far down the road to wind back, that particularly with the lack of a social welfare system to support any type of wind back in that employment and the warehousing of prisoners, and meanwhile we're setting foot on the same road with Junee, about to be privatised. So do we cut America off completely and concentrate on stopping our own progress down that road? It's just where do we stand along that road, and do you actually think America can wind that back?
I'm sure the two other gentlemen are much more equipped to answer that question than I. But I can tell you that my friends and I were emotional election night. The thought of a black man occupying the White House in my time, inconceivable, inconceivable. And especially one whose campaign was clearly marked by what I would consider to be a progressive point of view, and a very well thought out point of view. We are struggling with health care in large part because President Obama, I think, has not really accepted the fact that he's been given a mandate by us, by a majority, both chambers of the Senate and the House, plus the White House, now occupied by people who've said, we want universal health care. He's looking to be bipartisan. You hear this all the time. But I think when it comes to the drug war, I think he's going to be timid during his first term. Hope and believe that he'll get a second term, in which case I see some incremental progress. But he needs political cover. He needs Americans to say, we strongly support drug policy reform that looks like this. He appointed my successor as his drug czar. Gil Kurlikowski became the Seattle police chief when I stepped down. He made some positive statements about data, about science, about reason, and justice, and compassion, and yet has recently said and repeated many times that he believes that marijuana is a dangerous, addictive drug that has no medicinal value and should remain a Schedule I drug right there with grade A heroin. He is absolutely wrong on all counts, but he was a cop, and he grew up in that system, and he works with the DEA and all law enforcement agencies. I think we need, we the people in your country and in mine, to the extent that we support what generally is being said here tonight, to agitate, to educate, to organize, to mobilize, and really give our politicians political cover. The people are way out ahead of their politicians on this issue.
That's, I think, a good note on which to finish, and I'm afraid we do have to finish because we're almost out of time. Will you please join me in thanking very much our three speakers, Norm Stanley, Alex Stanley.
This is ABC Fora,